From the fragile observation drone that flew over jungle canopy so slowly it was shot down by small arms fire, to the stealth attack jet whose entire design philosophy was born from the lesson that Vietnam taught, that flying through radar-guided missiles was no longer survivable. These are every experimental aircraft used in the Vietnam War, and the machines that turned a jungle conflict into the most important aerospace laboratory in history. We start our list with experimental reconnaissance and surveillance aircraft, the Ryan Model 147 Firefly, the Lightning Bug, the first large-scale operational use of reconnaissance drones in combat history, deployed over North Vietnam from 1964 onward, when manned reconnaissance aircraft were taking unacceptable losses to SA-2 missiles. This tiny jet-powered unmanned vehicle outmaneuvered the SA-2 by flying low and fast through corridors that manned aircraft couldn't safely navigate, photographing targets that photo reconnaissance pilots had been dying to reach. Over 3,400 missions were flown before the program ended, and the Lightning Bug revolutionized reconnaissance warfare while nobody outside classified circles knew it existed. The Ryan Model 147H, the Buffalo Hunter, the low-altitude, deep-penetration variant of the Lightning Bug, optimized for high-speed runs beneath radar coverage over the most heavily defended areas of North Vietnam. It dominates the photographic intelligence mission at treetop level, flying routes that would have cost manned aircraft at loss rates the Air Force couldn't politically sustain. NVA air defense crews who shot down Lightning Bugs found no pilot, no body, and nothing to display as a propaganda trophy, which was itself a form of psychological advantage the program's designers hadn't anticipated but quickly learned to value. The Lockheed U-2 combat reconnaissance variant, not experimental in design but experimental in its Vietnam application, a massive, awe-inspiring high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft operating at 70,000 feet over North Vietnam and Laos, collecting signals intelligence and photographic coverage that no other platform could reach. SA-2 missiles that had shot down Francis Gary Powers over the Soviet Union in 1960 drove U-2 crews to operate at altitudes and on routes carefully calculated to stay outside engagement envelopes. The U-2 that flew over Vietnam carried the same basic airframe that had started the Cold War's greatest intelligence crisis, and carried it successfully. The Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird operational reconnaissance missions, the fastest aircraft ever to fly in sustained level flight, a colossal, awe-inspiring titanium reconnaissance platform that outran every missile and fighter. The NVA scrambled against it by simply accelerating away at over Mach 3.3. NVA radar operators who tracked SR-71s over North Vietnam reported the aircraft, vectored MiGs, watched the MiGs fall behind immediately, and filed reports that described an aircraft they had no answer for. Not a single SR-71 was ever lost to enemy action. Up next, experimental attack and close air support aircraft, the Cessna A-37 Dragonfly, a nimble light jet attack aircraft converted from the T-37 trainer and rushed to Vietnam as a combat evaluation in 1967 when the war created more close support demand than existing aircraft could fill. It carries 3,800 pounds of ordnance on a platform so light and maneuverable that it operates effectively at altitudes and speeds where fast jets overshoot targets before the pilot can properly identify them. The Dragonfly dominated the light attack mission so effectively that it entered full production, one of the rare Vietnam combat evaluations that succeeded completely and immediately. The Northrop YA-9, the prototype that lost, Northrop's competitor for the dedicated close air support contract, a compact, confidence-giving twin-engine attack aircraft that flew evaluation trials in 1972 alongside the design that eventually became the A-10. It dominated the close support role in testing, but lost the contract to Fairchild's design on survivability and weapons capacity grounds. Its fate was to be the aircraft that sharpened the specification mission the winning design had to beat, which means the YA-9 shaped the A-10 more directly than anyone who only studies winners would recognize. The Douglas A-1 Skyraider, electronic countermeasures variant, the World War II-era propeller attack aircraft that carried ECM pods on selected missions in Vietnam, a hulking, confidence-giving platform that flew slowly enough to maintain continuous electronic coverage over strike packages where faster jets couldn't maintain the dwell time the mission required. Its primary Vietnam roles remained conventional attack and combat search and rescue escort, but its adaptability to the ECM mission demonstrated that an aircraft considered obsolete before the war began still had capabilities the jet age hadn't replaced. Air Force crews described the Skyraider as the right tool for jobs that faster aircraft simply couldn't perform. The Grumman OV-1 Mohawk, Signals Intelligence variant, a compact twin turboprop surveillance aircraft developed for battlefield intelligence collection and deployed to Vietnam with sensor packages classified for decades, side-looking airborne radar and infrared surveillance systems that detected NVA troop movements at night through jungle canopy. Army aviation units that operated the Mohawk described it as the aircraft that saw things other platforms couldn't see in conditions where visibility meant survival for ground forces in contact. Its sensor imagery reached commanders in hours rather than the days that previous airborne intelligence systems required. Now let's look at experimental gunships and fire support aircraft. The Douglas AC-47 Spooky, the original gunship, the converted World War II transport that invented the fixed-wing gunship concept, a lumbering, massive aircraft whose three M134 miniguns each fire up to 6,000 rounds per minute into a continuous circle on the ground below through a left-banking orbit that puts the weapons constantly on target. The first AC-47 gunship mission in December 1964 obliterated a Viet Cong assault that was overwhelming a South Vietnamese position, and the concept spread immediately. Ground commanders who called Spooky described the minigun's solid tracer stream as the most reassuring sight in Vietnam because it meant the ground beneath the enemy had become uninhabitable. The Fairchild AC-119G Shadow and AC-119K Stinger, the twin-boom cargo aircraft converted into gunships as a cheaper supplement to the AC-130, developed in two distinct variants with meaningfully different capabilities. The G-model Shadow carried four M134 miniguns, but struggled over the mountains of Laos because its two piston engines couldn't maintain altitude with full weapons and fuel loads simultaneously. A hulking, dread-inducing platform whose performance ceiling became a survival problem on the most demanding missions. The K-model Stinger added two auxiliary J-85 jet engines and two 20mm cannon to address both limitations, transforming the aircraft's operational reach and lethality in a single redesign. The Lockheed AC-130A Spectre, first operational variant, the gunship that made the AC-47 obsolete, a massive, awe-inspiring four-engine turboprop platform that, in its original A variant, carried four 20mm miniguns and four 7.62mm miniguns, with later variants progressively adding heavier weapons, including 40mm Bofors cannon and ultimately a 105mm howitzer. The AC-130 dominates the truck-killing mission on the Ho Chi Minh Trail with a lethality that the AC-47 and AC-119 couldn't approach. NVA truck drivers who survived AC-130 attacks described being hunted by something they couldn't see, couldn't outrun, and couldn't hide from because the sensors saw through darkness and jungle canopy simultaneously. Moving on to experimental electronic warfare and special operations aircraft. The Douglas EB-66 Destroyer, electronic warfare variant, a converted bomber turned into the primary tactical electronic warfare aircraft of the Vietnam War, a compact, confidence-giving platform that orbited outside North Vietnamese airspace, jamming radar frequencies and providing electronic cover for strike packages ingressing to targets. Wild Weasel pilots who flew with EB-66 support described the difference in SA-2 radar activity as immediate and measurable. EB-66 crews flew their orbits in enemy radar coverage every mission, their electronic emissions announcing their position to every radar operator in North Vietnam, trusting that jamming coverage would keep the strike package alive. The Lockheed AC-121 Warning Star, Airborne Early Warning, a massive 4-engine surveillance aircraft derived from the Constellation airliner, orbiting over the Gulf of Tonkin and providing radar coverage of North Vietnamese airspace, a hulking, awe-inspiring platform that tracked NVA MiGs from the moment they left their airfields and vectored American fighters to intercept positions before visual contact. American fighter pilots who flew under AC-121 radar control described the advantage as transformative. Knowing where the MiGs were, how many, and at what altitude before the merge changed the fight from a search problem to a targeting problem. The AC-121, providing that radar picture, flew unarmed, unescorted, and slow. The Sikorsky HH-3E Jolly Green Giant, combat search and rescue, the helicopter that pulled downed aircrew out of North Vietnam under fire, a massive, confidence-giving aircraft with in-flight refueling capability that extended its reach to any point in North Vietnam where an American pilot was transmitting a survival beacon. Jolly Green crews flew into the most heavily defended airspace in the world, specifically to recover individual men, at risk that the arithmetic of losses never justified and the tradition of no man left behind never questioned. American pilots rescued by Jolly Greens described the sound of the rotor blades as the specific sound of surviving something they had concluded they wouldn't survive. The Sikorsky HH-53 Super Jolly Green Giant, the larger, faster, more powerful successor to the HH-3E, a hulking, awe-inspiring heavy rescue helicopter that carried more fuel, more defensive armament, and more range than anything that preceded it. The HH-53B entered service in 1967, with the more capable HH-53C following in 1968 and performing the bulk of combat rescue operations for the remainder of the war. It flew the Sun Tay Raid in November 1970, the daring assault on a North Vietnamese prison camp that found the prisoners had been moved but demonstrated a special operations capability that Hanoi had not believed the Americans possessed. The Super Jolly's role in Sun Tay is the finest hour of the combat rescue community, regardless of the outcome. Now, the Lockheed AC-130A Spectre at peak operations on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, 1970 to 1972, when the Air Force fielded the improved AC-130OE and AC-130OH variants with night vision sensors, laser designators, and the 105mm howitzer. It created what crews and commanders at the time described as the most lethal close air support platform in aviation history up to that point. These hulking, awe-inspiring gunships accumulated truck kill claims running into the thousands during the Commando Hunt interdiction campaign, figures that reflect reported strikes rather than independently verified kills, but that by any measure represented devastation on a scale no other single platform approached. NVA logistics planners who received reports of AC-130 activities along the trail responded by dispersing vehicles moving only on the darkest nights and hiding under the densest canopy, and the AC-130's sensors found them anyway. The gunship that started as a converted transport ended the Vietnam War as the single most effective interdiction weapon weapon the U.S. Air Force had ever operated and the direct ancestor of every gunship flying today, finishing off with the Lockheed Have Blue, the classified stealth demonstrator that never flew in Vietnam but exists entirely because of it. Have Blue's first flight came in December 1977, 2 years after the fall of Saigon. But every design decision it incorporated came directly from the Vietnam War's brutal lesson that conventional aircraft could not survive modern radar-guided air defenses at acceptable loss rates. The faceted geometry that reduced its radar cross-section to the equivalent of a small bird was the engineering answer to SA-2 missiles that had destroyed an estimated 200 to 300 American aircraft over North Vietnam, a loss rate that proved radar-guided missiles had permanently changed what survival in contested airspace required. Only 2 were ever built. Both crashed during testing. The concept survived both crashes, entered production as the F-117 Nighthawk, and flew its first combat missions over Baghdad on the opening night of Operation Desert Storm on January 17, 1991, proving that the lesson Vietnam taught about radar and survival had finally produced an aircraft that the missile batteries couldn't find.